Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Many years ago, scientists believed that religion would soon disappear and people would live in a benign, rational world. But religion has not disappeared. Moreover, the majority of the world's population remains religious to this day. Kurds are an Indo-European ethnic group, the fourth largest nation in the Middle East, and the largest nation in the region without a state of its own. The vast majority of Kurds are Muslims. Religion sets a person certain rules of behavior, makes them sacred, so people are afraid to break them. But today, we will learn the story of one family, where the rules of religion were distorted in favor of their own immoral beliefs. On January 26, 2006, a young man, Rahmat Suleimani, went to the police station and reported his beloved girlfriend Banaz missing. The man became concerned about her welfare after he had been unable to contact her for a week. The police did not take the missing report seriously as the man had no family ties with the missing woman, but they were forced to check the information and go to the address of residence. When the police visited the missing woman's home, they found nothing to confirm Rahmat's words about the disappearance. Her parents behaved calmly and did not express any obvious concern as if their daughter was really missing. Moreover, the family claimed that Banaz had not been home much lately and insisted that she was not missing, but had probably left and was probably at a friend's house. The police were satisfied with this explanation, but Rahmat persisted, harassing the police with daily visits to the station and forcing them to take search measures. He would not give up. The man was desperately searching for his beloved Banaz. Banaz Mahmoud was born on December 16, 1985, in Iraq. They were a traditional Iraqi Kurdish family with strict religious beliefs. They lived in the rural tribal area of Kaladiza in Iraqi Kurdistan. Mahmoud Babakir Mahmoud and his wife Behia had a son Bahman and 5 daughters, Beza, Behal, Payman, Jaband, and Banaz. It was a typical Iraqi family with strong views on the role of women. In 1995, when Banaz was 10 years old, her family fled to the UK. The move had no impact on the family's views. Remaining deeply religious and traditionally influenced, the Mahmouds Sr. were not about to change their way of life even in a liberated European country. They shunned modern notions and views and lived in their religious community. Following the traditions of the community, at the age of 17, Banaz was forcibly married to a man who was 10 years older. He had flown in from Iraq shortly before the wedding, spoke no English at all, and lacked even basic literacy. She had met her future husband only 3 times before the wedding, once on her father's property. A girl with brown eyes, long dark hair, and a kind smile, she submitted to tradition and moved into the home of a strange, alien, and cruel man. From the first days Banaz crossed the threshold of her new home, her husband set about raising her. Moral abuse, beatings, and physical violence became a daily occurrence in the girl's life. Banaz, who had lived half her life in the UK and had seen how modern people live, did not want to put up with cruelty and tyranny in her family. She made attempts to leave her husband many times, returning to her father's house, but her family forced her to return. Despite the disgusting attitude, divorce was out of the question, as it was considered a disgrace for the entire Mahmoud family. Unable to find support from her relatives, Banaz went to the police twice, but even there, she was virtually abandoned to the mercy of fate, without even bothering to question her husband about his wife's injuries. In July 2005, after 2 agonizing years of marriage, Banaz ran away from her tyrant husband's house and returned to her parents' home. This was the first link in the chain of events that led to Banaz Mahmoud's disappearance. After her separation from her husband, Banaz felt as if she was breathing again. She met a man named Rahmat Suleimani. The bright, pretty 19-year-old girl fell in love with the man. Rahmat was charmed by Banaz's beauty and modesty. They liked each other very much, but had to keep the beginning of their relationship a secret. Having exchanged telephone numbers, the lovers allowed themselves to correspond only twice a day, early in the morning and late in the evening. Rahmat was different from the men in Banaz's entourage. Calm, judicious, and polite, Rahmat treated the girl very reverently and tenderly and won her heart at once. Within a short time, the couple was already dreaming of a wedding and a happy family life. They even came up with names for their future children. These fantasies filled Banaz with happiness and kept her afloat, not allowing her to break under the pressure of hatred and aggression, which was spewed at her by her family, who never accepted the departure of her husband. In early October 2005, while walking down the street, Banaz noticed the same car following her and someone following her. From their appearance, she realized that they were Kurdish diaspora people assigned by her father. The girl, who knew the foundations of her family, became very scared for her safety. On October 10, 2005, Banaz went to the police again. During a 2-hour interview, she told the detective on duty in detail about her life with her husband, the injuries she had received from him, her family's resentment, and the surveillance that had begun. She shared with local police that she had been repeatedly beaten by her tyrant husband, and during one of the assaults, she nearly had a tooth knocked out because she publicly called her husband by his first name. She brought to the attention of the police several times that she seriously feared for her safety and even her life. But unfortunately, Banaz's statement went into the back of the desk, and detectives didn't even bother to interview her family and husband and verify the accuracy of the information. Again, Banaz's statement is not taken properly. She promises to contact the police again if she feels she is in danger. For about 2 months, Banaz and Rahmat met secretly and went undetected. But in early December 2005, when they met near a London subway station, they were spotted by people from the clan. Information about another disgrace was immediately reported to the girl's father. That same evening, a council consisting of all male relatives gathered at the Mahmoud family home. During a heated discussion of Banaz's actions, which they considered inappropriate, her uncle Ari Mahmoud announced that to restore the family's honor, Banaz should be killed. She overheard this conversation. In December 2005, Banaz went to the police again and detailed that she had been under surveillance for months and that the day before she had learned that they wanted to take her life. She made a list of 5 members of her own family who were to carry out the massacre, but the law enforcers again did not take her words seriously. Soon it turns out that it was a big mistake, the consequence of which will be the disappearance of Banaz. And to learn about her fate, detectives will have to wade through a web of lies, cruelty, and ignorance. 2 weeks later, Banaz's father tricks her into going to a relative's house, promising to discuss her divorce. When she arrived, Bubakir Mahmoud made her drink brandy and left her alone in a room with the TV on. Casually turning around, she sees her father putting on rubber gloves and reaching for a rope. Realizing that she was about to be taken out of her life, Banaz rushed to the front door, but the door was locked. In order to get out, she had to break a window, the shards of which cut her hands. The girl managed to get to a nearby cafe where she fainted. The paramedics who arrived at the scene took her to the hospital where they called the police. When Banaz regained consciousness, she called Rahmat and asked him to come. After being discharged from the hospital, Banaz went to live with Rahmat Suleimani. They welcomed the beginning of 2006 together and were quite happy, but by mid-January, the Mahmoud family furiously began urging Banaz to return home to mend their relationship with her and discuss her marriage to Rahmat. Banaz believed her mom and dad and agreed to go back to her father's house. She believed that in case her father attacked her, her mother would protect her from harm. As insurance, Banaz visited the police station again, writing a full statement and the names of people who might harm her. The young woman was fearful, but still returned to her family and parents' home. On January 22, 2006, in the street, 3 men attempted to grab Rahmat and force him into a car. Suleimani was able to fight back and report the incident to the police. 2 days later, he and Banaz were to appear at the station to testify, but Banaz never showed up. All attempts by Rahmat to contact her were unsuccessful, as Banaz Mahmoud disappeared after returning to her parents' house. Rahmat, who had been in constant contact with her, was very worried and filed a missing persons report with the police. Numerous appeals to the police eventually bore fruit. The case of Banaz Mahmoud's disappearance came to the attention of the Homicide and Serious Crime Directorate, and Chief Inspector Caroline Good was appointed to lead the investigation. The first version of the disappearance was that Banaz was being held in a house in the diaspora. To search for the woman, Inspector Caroline Good organized a large-scale search of properties associated with the Mahmoud family. The suspects, Banaz's father and uncle, as well as her ex-husband, were called in for questioning. Searches have begun for 3 other men on the list Banaz provided to police in December 2005: Omar Hussein, Muhammad Ali, and Mohammed Ham. All of them were Banaz's cousins. When police searched the forest and tried to question her family, doors were slammed in their faces and the family was unable to help investigate her disappearance. Police found no pictures of her at the family home, and according to Caroline Good, officers were outraged by the complete indifference from her family. Then 30 people came to the attention of Caroline Good. All of them were arrested and interrogated. During searches from the persons involved in the case, were seized more than 20 vehicles and 300 cell phones. Absolutely all those questioned tried in one way or another to slow down the investigation, giving completely contradictory testimony about Banaz's whereabouts. Some lied about seeing her after her disappearance. Others, including Banaz's mother, simply refused to talk to the police, and some claimed she was a fugitive. Realizing that none of them would cooperate voluntarily, Caroline Good obtained permission to install listening devices in the cell of those arrested. At the time, Banaz's father and uncle, as well as Mohammed Hama, remained behind bars. The other 2 men on the list managed to flee to Iraq. When the detectives received the first results of the wiretap, they were horrified. Not only did all 3 arrested men have no regrets, they literally savored the details of Banaz's death. From their conversations, it became clear that in the early morning hours of January 23rd, the Mahmoud family deliberately left their home, letting Ali, Hussein, and Hama inside. There they attacked Banaz and subjected her to beatings and violence for 2 hours. At the end of the torture, Hama tightened a cord around her neck and strangled her. As he recounted the last moments of Banaz's life, Hama could not contain his laughter. But it was the accusation of her cousin, Mohammed Hama, after he admitted to being there when Rahmat was threatened, that became the turning point. While Hama was held in cells awaiting trial, his phone conversations were secretly recorded. Caroline Good, with a new dose of horror, listened to the recordings, in which the suspect proudly described the details of the massacre of a relative. They congratulated each other on how courageous they were. Hama shared in detail what they had done to Banaz. She was vomiting and scared but didn't utter a sound. He then wrapped the rope around her neck 3 times so tightly that it burrowed under the young woman's skin. He excitedly continued to speak as he placed his feet on her back and pulled and tugged on the rope. Banaz clung to life until her last breath. It took the criminals more than half an hour for her to die. Caroline Good and the detectives who had seen much could not hold back tears as they realized the horror that innocent Banaz had endured. At the time of Banaz's abuse, her cousin, 30-year-old Dana Amin, was in the house and helped the perpetrators push Banaz's body into a suitcase. Ari Mahmoud dragged him out of the house to a waiting auto nearby. Hama added that a police car drove by, but its crew did not pay attention to the suitcase, which had hair and an elbow sticking out of it. The very people who were supposed to protect her from harm plotted her murder, strangled her with a shoelace, stuffed her body into a suitcase. The perpetrators then took the gruesome luggage outside London, with scraps of conversation mentioning a derelict house with a garden in Birmingham. Caroline Good matched the information she received with the movement data of the arrestees' phones and determined the search area. Given the vastness of the area, the work could take a long time, but to help the investigation again came to the aid of the criminals themselves. who turned out to be quite talkative and literally reveled in the act of retribution. During the conversation, one of them suddenly asked the accomplices if they had put the freezer back in its place. Now Good knew exactly what she had to look for. A police helicopter was dispatched to search, and while repeatedly circling the area, it spotted a house whose backyard was littered with a pile of trash. Among the black garbage bags, a white oblong object that looked very much like a freezer stood out as a bright spot. A close inspection of the suspicious house on the ground confirmed the hunch. Setting aside the heavy equipment, the police officers began digging. In shifts, they dug, but when the depth of the hole reached their shoulders, the policemen were ready to give up. All except Caroline Good. She clearly remembered the words of Mohammed Hamma, who had cheerfully expressed in front of relatives that he had buried her so deep that they would only be able to find her with the help of an informer. The inspector convinced everyone to extend the search for one more day, and late in the evening of April 28, 2006, the suitcase was found. Banaz's remains were in extremely poor condition, so only dental records and DNA samples could be used to identify her. Her body, folded into a fetal position and hidden in a suitcase, was buried under a freezer in the garden of a house in Birmingham. On May 1, 2006, the suspects were charged. They were all convinced that they had done exactly the right thing and showed no remorse. Mohammed Hamma smugly declared that the case would never go to trial because he was carrying out an act of retaliation. Caroline Good did have to face a new wave of opposition organized by the Kurdish diaspora. After the discovery of Banaz's remains, the police received a flood of those wishing to provide the criminals with alibis, all of whom claimed that on the day of the alleged death of the woman, the suspects were in public and could not have committed such a crime. In total, the case involved 50 people involved in one way or another in Banaz's death. Caroline Good later recalled those events this way: "I felt nothing but anger, disgust, and contempt for these men. 50 men had actually participated in the murder of one woman, and they were proud of their masculinity." In early March 2007, London's Central Criminal Court began hearing cases against Boubakir Mahmoud, Ari Mahmoud, and Mohammed Ham. Prosecutor Victor Temple, during the trial, described the crime as a cold-blooded and heartless execution that was ordered by the victim's father and uncle. In June 2007, a jury unanimously found all three guilty of the charges and not deserving of leniency. The father was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 20 years, the uncle received life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years, and cousin Mohammed Hamma also received life imprisonment, but with a minimum term of 17 years. Delivering the verdict, Judge Brian Barker said, "In order to restore your so-called family honor, you have decided that she must die and her memory must be erased. This is a barbaric and heartless crime. What honor is there in a father putting his status in society above the life of his own flesh and blood?" But what could these words mean to the ruthless criminals who had long carefully planned to rid themselves of the fictitious disgrace? 4 months after the trio's conviction, the London police were notified that Muhammad Ali had been arrested for a crime against a boy in Iraq. He had taken his life. The leadership of Scotland Yard had to make a lot of efforts for his extradition, because previously Iraq never agreed to such measures and did not extradite its citizens. But the British managed to get their way, and in June 2009, Ali was extradited to the United Kingdom. Omar Hussein, the last of the 5 perpetrators, was hiding in the Iraqi countryside, trying not to be seen by the public. In December 2009, during an argument with one of his brothers, he was shot in the leg and had to seek medical attention. He was arrested at the hospital by the police who were called, and after his discharge, they began preparing him for extradition. Initially, Hussein claimed that he had not been in London in 2005, and therefore he could not be involved in Banaz's death. However, this was contradicted by UK Social Security records, according to which he was receiving refugee benefits at the time without delay. In March 2010, Hussein was extradited. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 21 years. Dana Amin, who was in the house at the time of Banaz's murder, was sentenced to 8 years in prison for helping to dispose of the victim's body and obstructing justice. Banaz's recorded interview at the police station at one of her addresses proved her family's guilt. She once handed over a letter to a South London police station in which she gave the names of men she said were ready to kill her and her boyfriend Rahmat, with whom she had been seen kissing. The people she refers to and names were members of her family and the wider Iraqi Kurdish community, enraged by Banaz's decision to divorce a man who acted as if she was a dirty shoe to be worn whenever they wanted. She tried to leave him several times, but returned to try again, at the insistence of her family. The indifference of the police in this case, which cost the life of a young woman, has led to a significant change in the way such honor cases are handled today. Following the death of Banaz Mahmoud, an inquiry into police misconduct was launched. An independent commission prosecuted 9 police officers for their inadequate response to allegations made by Banaz. 7 of them received reprimands and 2 were dismissed. Worth highlighting in this case is the tenacious team of Caroline Good, who was able not only to find Banaz's body, but also to secure the conviction of her father and uncle, and to bring back the escaped criminals from Iraq. Unfortunately, this would not bring the marvelous Banaz back to life, nor would it change the fact that the people on Earth who were the worst for her were her relatives, who by basic instinct should be her most important protectors. Banaz was buried in the Merton and Sutton Joint Cemetery in Morden. A memorial service for Banaz was held on June 26, 2007 at the Morden Auditorium, followed by a granite memorial headstone at her grave. Her family did not attend either service. Few people, including Rahmat Suleimani, Caroline Good, and Banaz's 2 sisters, came to honor the memory of the unfortunate woman. The memorial was paid for by law enforcement officials working on the Banaz case and the women's rights organization. Rahmat Suleimani, who remained in the UK under the Witness Protection Program, never recovered from the death of Banaz. He wrote a letter of condolence to his deceased beloved, telling her that she was the love of his life. No, she was just the whole world to him. In May 2016, 10 years after the crime, he hanged himself. This marked his 3rd attempt to end his life. There is little evidence of the extent of the problem with the police, as the law is not required to record honor crimes. The Association for the Protection of Women's Rights in Iran and Kurdistan reported that police recorded more than 2,800 cases of honor-based violence in 2010. However, an organization set up to support victims of honor crimes and forced marriages said that more than half of the 600 calls they receive each month go unattended due to insufficient evidence. The UN estimates there were 5,000 honor killings worldwide in 2000. The worst form of censure against women who are perceived to have dishonored a family or community. While most cases are in South Asia or the Middle East, and in predominantly Muslim communities, cases such as that of 19-year-old Banaz Mahmoud have highlighted tensions in immigrant communities trying to adjust to changing lifestyles. Some groups suggest that thousands of honor crimes go unnoticed in minority communities in Britain. Hundreds more women are taken abroad where they are forced into marriage or seriously harmed when their changed outlook on life puts them in conflict with their traditional male communities. Banaz Mahmoud Bakabir Aga, a young woman of Kurdish descent, died on January 23, 2006, for the honor of her family. Her older sister, Behal, urged other women in the same situation as her and her sister not to be afraid to seek help before it was too late. Even today, she continues to fear for her life, lives at a secret address, and never goes outside without a long black veil that covers her entire body and face except for her eyes. After all, even running away or living a secret life takes place in constant fear of being found, and from Banaz's story, it is obvious that there simply could not be a happy ending. Oriental women probably absorb submission and dependence on men with their mother's milk, accepting their will over and over again, whatever it may be. The Metropolitan Police team responsible for the investigation and for finding Banaz's body and filing a case against those involved in her murder has won an award for their work in detective investigation. Chief Inspector Carolyn Good was awarded the Royal Police Medal for her work in leading the investigation. The videotape, which had long gone unnoticed by the public for 7 years, has become crucial evidence for investigators after warnings about the dangers faced by the young woman went largely unheeded. A camera set up in the corner of a police interrogation room captured the young woman's nervousness as she brushes her hair away from her face and begins to tell her grim story. Banaz Mahmoud quietly and in detail describes the violence and oppression at the hands of her abusive husband. She tells of intimidation by men on the street whom she recognizes. Then, finally, she warns of her impending death because of the dishonor she has brought upon her family. "Until now, they follow me," Miss Mahmoud says in ragged English with a strong Iraqi accent, for she has lived in the Kurdish region of northern Iraq. "This is the main reason I came to the police station. In the future, at any time, if something happens to me, it will be them." Then the camera turns off, the lights go out, and total darkness sets in. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel. There are many shocking stories ahead of you.